morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
Still a deficit budget. We're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby. So the first thing that is done is for the...
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring back Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
It's a great time for you to join us on Early Exchange, and this morning we intend to look at intra-African trade. Yes, African trade with other countries of the world, but how much does it trade with itself? This will be the focus for today's show. And as always, there's a gentleman who's always here to help you start your money. His name is Femi Ayodele. Good morning, Femi.
Good morning, Blessing. I love that compliment, gentleman.
Okay, it makes you really feel gentle.
All right, good morning. Glad you have joined us on Early Exchange, where we talk about issues related to business, finance, and the economy. We're also going to look at the global issues, that are trending around the world. Glad to know you're there with us. Don't forget, you can be part of this conversation because Early Exchange is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. This implies that you can join us on our social media platform, on our YouTube page to share your view. Like I always say, it's your program. So let your voice be heard. Now we go on a short break to link up with Grace, who's going to take us around the world with these updates. Stay with us.
Thank you, Femi. Hello, and welcome to the morning news update on Souq News. I am Juvi Ofiene. The African Development Bank, AFDB, has begun the first phase of disbursing $540 million in agro-industrial funds for the development of special agro-industrial processing zones, SAPZs, in Nigeria. The Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the bank's president, Professor Banji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, disclosed this during a presentation at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. According to him, the funds will support inclusive and sustainable agro-industrial development, focusing initially on 3 states, Oyo, Kaduna, and Cross River. Furthermore, the SAPZ initiative seeks to transform rural areas into economic zones of prosperity, as well as harness the power of commercial agriculture. The collaboration includes Shell, Total Energies, ENI, and NNPC, contributing to Nigeria's goal of utilizing its extensive gas reserves for economic growth. The $2.5 billion SAPZ project is expected to become Africa's largest urea complex, addressing 65% of Nigeria's fertilizer needs and meeting sub-regional market demand. Moving on, the Nigerian government has initiated the enforcement of the ban on the importation, manufacture, distribution, sale, and use of alcoholic beverages in sachets, PET, and glass bottles of 200 ml and below. Speaking at a press conference in Abuja yesterday, the Director General of the country's Agency for Food, Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, Professor Mujisola Adeyeye, revealed that as of January 31, 2024, no alcoholic beverage in these categories was registered by NAFDAC. She emphasized that enforcement actions commenced nationwide on February 1, 2024, following the expiration of the window period given to the manufacturers to sell off existing stock. During these actions, it was noted that some banned products manufacturers were still producing and maintaining stocks. prompting rigorous enforcement measures by NAFDAC. Still in Nigeria, the Nigerian naira demonstrated gains against the dollar at both the official and parallel markets yesterday, 5th of February 2024. This trend aligns with the central bank's announcement regarding the introduction of a singular foreign currency, FCY, gateway bank, aimed at centralizing corresponding banking activities. At the official market, the naira appreciated by 1.10%, closing at 1,519.68 per dollar, signifying a 15.67 naira gain compared to the previous close. The intraday high and low were recorded at 1,526 naira per dollar and 906 naira per dollar respectively, indicating a spread of 620 naira per dollar. The forex turnover at the official market remained stable at $440.13 million. The parallel market also witnessed a gain, closing at 1,455 naira per dollar, reflecting a 3.09% increase. The Apex Bank's focus on surveillance and technological capabilities underscores its commitment to monitor cryptocurrency transactions in response to the evolving digital finance landscape. Away from Nigeria, Githa Holding PJSC, a subsidiary of Abu Dhabi-based conglomerate International Holding Company, has entered a share purchase agreement to acquire a 44% stake in MNG Havayolari de Tasimasilik AS MNG Airlines, a leading commercial cargo company headquartered in Turkey. This acquisition, valued at $211.20 million, was announced yesterday. This development marks a significant stride towards diversifying Githa Holdings' portfolio, amplifying its logistical and distribution capabilities. The Group Chief Executive Officer of Githa Holding, Falal Amin, noted that the partnership not only expands the company's logistical capabilities, but also strengthens its commitment to supplying customers with the highest quality products sourced from around the globe. And finally, Toyota Motors has increased its full-year operating profit forecast by nearly 9% on Tuesday, attributing the boost to higher sales volume and a weaker yen in third-quarter results. The world's leading automaker now anticipates a profit of $32.99 billion for the year, up from previous estimate of 4.5 billion yuan. Unlike some competitors facing challenges such as slowing sales growth and production cuts due to high interest rates and declining demand for electric vehicles, Toyota reported an operating profit of 1.68 trillion yuan for the quarter ending December 31st, with a focus on hybrid vehicles. Toyota aims to outperform competitors, maintaining its position as the world's top-selling automaker amidst ongoing challenges related to product certification scandals at the group's companies. And that's all there is for now. Do stay with us as Early Exchange continues in a bit. I am Juvi Ofiene.
All right, thank you, Juby, for the news update. We're going to start today's conversation by looking at the latest development as regards the exit of Burkina Faso from ECOWAS. As much as ECOWAS and other international bodies have condemned the coup in Burkina Faso and the military takeover, the youngest serving president in Africa, Ibrahim Traoré, seems to be consolidating power with his alliance with Russia and some of the steps he has taken in recent times. But the question is, could this be the change the people of Burkina Faso are asking for? Could this be the dawn of a new era? What are the vested interests here? And why Russia and not another country? These are questions that our in-house analysts will help us to provide answers to. We're being joined by Sam Oruwuji. Glad to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Femi. My pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to be your host as well.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning.
Good morning, Blessing.
Welcome to today's edition of the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, so let's start the conversation by looking at Ibrahim Traore, that's the president of Burkina Faso. We're looking at some of the actions he has taken in recent times. Is the younger serving president in Africa, if not in the world? That could be debatable, but in Africa, yes, he is, a 36-year-old man, taking some actions. Now, one of the critical steps he took recently was the alliance with Russia in order to strengthen his consolidation on power. Why do you think he took that kind of step? What had a vested interest here? Why Russia?
Thank you very much, Femi. In the realm of international politics and diplomacy, nations will always align where their interest is uppermost. So if Burkina Faso, a recent development, is trying to align with Russia, they must have some basic interests that they want to sustain. So it's within their right to align with any nation they choose to align with, as long as their interest is protected. And in international politics, just like domestic politics, permanent interest is what is uppermost when nations have kind of relationship. So that is not, in my view, a strange move. Then if you look at it from another perspective, Russia is equally isolated in the global international politics. So they're equally looking for allies in Africa that they can partner with in terms of doing business. So if you see it from that perspective, Russia has an interest, is trying to make an inroad into Africa politics. So I think the surest way is trying to align with the military juntas, the triumvirate, as I call them, within the Sahel region. So I think that's the shortest way to answer that question for now.
All right. Do you find anything strategically fundamental about this alliance? It's not the first time that Russia and Burkina Faso having relations, even when they were still USSR. So after that, Burkina Faso recognized Russia as the successor of the Soviet Union way back in 1967 up till now. And even in 2023, Russia reopened its embassy in Burkina Faso. So what has rekindled, in quotes, this love?
Same principles of international diplomacy that we spoke to earlier. There are no permanent friend, no permanent enemy, but permanent interest. So once they see that there's a new interest in an environment, people weigh their options, and as long as those interests are beneficial, mutually beneficial to those nations, then they will need to reappraise their foreign policy objective within those countries. And once the strategic interests of those countries are aligned with some other strategic interests, then people will always mutually relate to sustain their interests within the international system.
When you have a new leader or when an administration is just coming on board, there's always this desire to make some moves to show people or give the impression that they are the right person for the right moment. Could it be the reason why this is taking place now, why you think he's taking this kind of move? And there's also this sympathy from the people of Burkina Faso for military rule due to some sentiments they share about the overbearance of the French colonial masters. What are the underlying factors here, fueling the sentiment that the people of Burkina Faso have for the military rulers that you have presently?
I think essentially, if you look at the historiography of colonial rule in Africa and the relationship between France and its policy of assimilation, as it were, had a very strong grip on African country. And more often than not, the new leaders are taking position that the relationship with France had not been very beneficial to their people. And that's why you see many of them who did those things they did have become so popular. So, and if you look at some of the countries that are contiguous to Burkina Faso, when those decisions were made, there's a spike in their economic activities, which has brought some prosperity to the people. To that extent, then the popularities of those military junta has come to stay. If you look at it from the point of view of international politics again, sovereignty of nations are very important. So nations will decide to do whatever they want to do, even though some people will frown at those decisions. But then maybe as we progress the conversation, be able to look at some other issues as it relates to the topic under discourse.
All right, just last week, Russia donated wheat to Burkina Faso. So they're doing this donation to countries they consider to have strong ties with. So do you think there's going to be some form of implication as to what would be the reciprocal need of Russia from these donations like this? Because since the Russia-Ukraine war, grain has been scarce and African countries have been more affected in other parts of the world. So Russia donating grain now to Burkina Faso.
Well, that donation is to enhance their mutual relationship.
So I'm asking, what do you think Russia could be gunning for?
Naturally, that relationship is mutual, so there are certain things that Russia will benefit from Burkina Faso in the long run. So I don't see any problem with the donation of grains to Burkina Faso, in my personal view. But then there are other relationships that will be derived from those donations. And we used to say in the PG school some years back, aid and not aids, and that's don't just give aids, find a way to trade so that you can improve on the economic prosperities of the citizens of Burkina Faso, but it's neither here nor there.
All right, let me ask, you know this popular saying that there's no free lunch anywhere, even in Freetown, so this supposedly free gifts.
No, like I said, the gift is just to enhance their relationship. There are other bilateral relationships that are not in the fore for now, but as that relationship progresses, then we'll begin to see how some of those other issues beyond the gift will be seen. Maybe they have some interest in some of the things that they want to benefit from that environment. But mutuality is a general concept in international relations, so I don't think there's anything wrong in donating grains. Whatever the implication will come to fall as that relationship progresses. So it will be too early to make some assumptions about what are the implications for the donation, but donations are part of international relations.
You know, beyond Burkina Faso, even Russia has extended its overture to other African countries. A good example is Nigeria, that depends on Russia for our wheat bread, the wheat flour being used in making bread here. But why do you think, if I may put it this way, Africa is becoming the latest bride now for the powers that be, the Western world, even the Russian authorities? Everybody's taking keen interest in Africa, not just Burkina Faso, but other African countries, Mali, even Nigeria, and the rest of them. Why do you think Africa is of interest to these? I think
there's a tilt in the balance of power across the globe, and African is at the center when it comes to primary commodities. So the big power, or the global north, is finding a way to see how they can realign with various African countries for their personal interests. But what is critical in my view is that this new balance of power, to what extent can African leaders benefit in such a way that this relationship will improve on the economic prosperities of their citizens. So that is what is critical. So everybody wants to come here. So now that the new sphere of influence is shifting back to Africa, then leaders should put forward into the tables of those who are jostling in terms of how to improve on our relationship, not just taking primary commodities from Africa. Rather, they should try and invest substantially in Africa so that we can benefit from this new relation.
Now, this new relations between Russia and African countries, what does Africa stand to gain? And in the immediate, what does it look like Russia stands to gain? How can Africa take advantage of this relationship? What are the areas it can benefit from?
Okay, if you look at it from the regional bloc, the BRICS has about 4 new countries coming into that union. Russia is a major player currently. So South Africa is a major player. Let's see how this new marriage will benefit African, particularly in terms of trying to suppress the growing influence of the United States of America in terms of dollar as a unit of measurement for international trade. They are trying to float a common currency that might be beneficial to the African countries that are part of it. By and large, what is important in this new struggle for Africa, the way I call it, is that leaders must be very strategic in what they place on the table so that this new relationship, not a new colonial relationship that exists currently, from a new liberal perspective, then countries in Africa must take advantage of this new relationship by seeing how they can move from primary commodity exports to bringing factories here that will benefit the people.
Looking at the business relations between Russia and Burkina Faso, Russia in recent times, just announced the launch of a nuclear plant in Burkina Faso and to offer support in the area of energy. And interestingly, they have some things in common when it comes to culture. Now, you are aware of the sanctions being placed on these 3 countries as a result of the coup and the military takeover. Now, could this strengthen maybe a country like Burkina Faso or give him the chances of surviving without ECOWAS and even the sanctions that have been placed on them, even survive the impact of that? If Russia is coming on board with this kind of partnership to have a nuclear plant and to provide some support in terms of energy and other military equipment, do you think they can survive their exit from ECOWAS with this kind of alliance?
Sanctions are part of the mechanism for resolving crises within the international system. So that sanction that is placed on them is nothing new. Other bigger nations have been placed on sanction. Even Russia currently is on sanction from some other superpower. But again, if you look at the nuclear plant that they want to build there, that will improve on their energy needs, their military needs, so some extent. So I think if you look at it from a balanced perspective, Burkina Faso will gain from that relationship. The relationship with ECOWAS is a very problematic one to make a comment on now, because the 15-member Economic Community of West Africa, in terms of regional bloc, is dwindling in its strategic power within the ECOWAS sub-region. So again, the leaders must look inward to see how they can re-engineer that economic union. To what extent has that union over 40-something years has benefited the people, even in spite of the free movement of goods and services within the sub-region. Mauritania had pulled out some years back. So, and this, in terms of the policy of regional influential, I think the power of the economic community is gradually reducing where people are pulling out. So they need to up their game in terms of how they manage their relationship. Sanctions are part of international relations. Even when you place sanctions on people, they are national interest supersedes whatever sanction you place with them. So if they feel that they are aligning with Russia at this particular point in time, we help them to boost their economic prosperity for their citizens, then that's within the domain of their sovereignty to make those decisions.
This efforts by some African countries, particularly that of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, to shake off the French hold over them, and this new darling that some African countries seem to have found in Russia. Do you think there's any reason to be worried or even cautious? Does it look like displacing one master and replacing with another?
Well, that's a very tough question to answer, but let me just try if I can. It's a very tricky question. In terms of relationship within the international system, countries will always relate, but I think the challenge of Africa over a period of time, particularly with those who colonized Africa, Russia was not one of them. I know that they had some issues around Ethiopia, if my knowledge serves me right. But the new alignment is a welcome development, in my personal view.
Why is it?
The relationship between France and the French African country has not really been beneficial to those countries. So those decisions that they made, even though I'm not supporting a military intervention in African politics, but then that's if you look at the recent development with those areas and the level of development that has happened within the few months, that shows that the French government, if we must speak truth, has held those people down in terms of the way they control the resources, the way they use a uniform currency that was not really beneficial to the people of Africa. To that extent, we can say is beneficial to this country. Then when you look at it from a regional political arrangement, there's a cause to be worried, because these new alignments will break that regional blocks that currently exist for common interests of those who belong to those unions. So from that perspective, yes, there's a cause to be worried that people are pulling from the economic bloc.
All right, as much as everybody condemns coup or military takeover, you have a young man in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, who seems to be providing leadership, according to the sentiment from the people now. Last week, he came up with a policy that no more gold for the West. You know, gold is one of the leading products for Burkina Faso, and that's where they make the bulk of their money. But he decided that no more refining of crude gold abroad. It has to be done locally. It seems to be providing leadership. Do you think this would justify the military takeover, and then perhaps his people could give him a chance? Because he has promised that in 11 months' time, he laid the foundation stone for the gold refinery, the first in that country, and it will be ready in 11 months, you know, and then they'll begin to refine their own golds without any support from any country. Do you think this would justify the military takeover of that country?
Well, within the realm of government, government exists with a view to providing welfare and security. And if it's able to provide some incentive that will bring productivity or production to Burkina Faso in terms of refining gold within that, that will impact the economy positively. So the citizens will be in a better position to appraise their president. And I think based on what we can hear from paper reviews, is showing leadership. To what extent can he sustain this leadership profile? Remain to be seen. But then within the purview of providing some economic incentive for the citizen, within 11 months, if he's able to build a gold refinery, that means there will be increasing prosperity for citizens. There will be productivity in terms of what comes into the country. So you refine gold and you take them out. So in terms of value addition, that will be beneficial to Burkina Faso.
All right, let's look at what the coup leaders or the power that is now leading these countries where coup have happened, and their resolve to take back or take ownership of their own natural resources. This decision to make the natural resources of these countries work for the country doesn't necessarily have to be a coup before some African countries make resolve like this. Is there a way to change the course of leadership and make it work for the citizens without coup?
Leadership has to do with vision, maybe whether it comes through the barrel of the gun, even though we don't support that currently. I think to a very large extent, those young guys, apart from that of Niger, I guess, may have seen some good reason to find a way to have a dominant control over their natural resource that has been exploited over so many years, and you are giving them pittance back when you exploit their resources. So if those political leaders didn't find it necessary to make such decisions, and some people in uniform had that vision to translate that into reality for their country, I think, in my view, once that becomes very beneficial to the citizen, then I don't think anybody really have any right to criticize them for making that bold decision. But like I said, to what extent can this be sustained over a period of time remain to be seen. So these are the critical issues. Maybe they look very popular. Maybe when they are able to consolidate power, they revert back to the status quo of stealing those resources from their people. God forbid if that happens.
Okay, we hope that doesn't happen at all, and that though the change of leadership may have been widely approved, it will result to something very good for these countries. Maybe out of that, it can just be a spark of change that will go around Africa, not using the channel of coup, but to make Africans look inward and think better on how to utilize their resources. Let's take a break on the conversation and return after this time.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Juliet Benite.
I'm Godio Didi.
My name is Professor Oladokun Sulaiman Olarawaju.
Souq News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to Souq News.
So I'm happy that Souq TV has come into existence. I'm happy to be here in the Souq News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think Souq News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and Souq News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching Souq News.
Keep watching Souq News. It's a place to be.
Keep watching Souq News.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
Still a deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby. So the first thing that is done is for the...
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring back Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, indeed. Our obligation is to shape policy and advance development with our conversation, and that's why we're looking at the latest development in Burkina Faso as regards the exit of that country from ECOWAS, and also the need for inter-trade bilateral relations between African countries. And by extension, we're going to look at some of the partnerships that should take place among African countries. We still have Sam Oruwije here with us in the studio. Glad to know you're still here with us.
My pleasure.
All right. Before we wrap up on the issue of Burkina Faso and go to the intra-African, trade that should exist between African countries, now let's look at the role ECOWAS should have played, in recent times. Permit my use of words. It seems ECOWAS is helpless. ECOWAS has placed sanctions on this country that seems not to be making yielding any productivity. What would you expect ECOWAS to have done differently, knowing fully well that our president, Bola Tinubu, is the chairman? And what could be the ripple effect of this on Nigeria? And also on the other hand, will it not embolden other African countries to take coup as the order of the day?
Again, this is another very tricky question, but I will just attempt. I think when these issues broke last year, and I remember being interviewed by Blessing, and I guess you, and when we were clamoring for diplomatic option towards the conflict resolution mechanism approach that the ECOWAS used, I think when this issue came, this high-handedness on the part of ECOWAS was a bit hazy, in my view. A diplomatic government-to-government channel, people-to-people channel will have been used to try to see how the Economic Community of West Africa should have resolved this issue. Be as it may, that damage has been done, even with the placement of sanction. And these people are telling you, in spite of your sanction that you place on us, we have decided to leave the marriage. Again, I think that was the best option at that particular point in time, but with the benefit of hindsight, I think there will have been more diplomatic channels exploited to resolve the issue. Like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, the regional bloc is being weakened by the exit of another 3 countries. Mauritania has left earlier to join the Maghreb Union. So if that comes, at the end of the day, the economic community, in spite of the existing protocols, may not have a grip on some of the commitment they made far back in 1975. So those are critical issues. Like I mentioned, ECOWAS need to look inward in terms of good governance. Are they providing the right leadership? Is it just sufficient that you place sanction on people even though you are wearing plain clothes and you're not able to deliver good governance? So what do you expect the citizens to do? So if they want to avoid these scenarios of military incursion into African politics, good governance must be taken very seriously. And the issue of corruption, the rule of law, must be uppermost as well.
All right, let's take the conversation to intra-African trade, as the former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, has called for increased bilateral relations between Nigeria and Angola. Now, interestingly, these 2 countries are the biggest oil-producing countries in Africa, but yet have not traded with themselves. What kinds of trade can Nigeria and Angola do with each other? Let's begin from there.
I think that statement was made in the bilateral relationship between Nigeria and Angola business community. My view is that we may not tackle the African trade issue in silos. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is already in place. To what extent can we strengthen intra-African trade and take the benefits of over 1.3 billion African to do business among ourselves so that we can improve on our economic prosperity. So it's a welcome development, speaking to a bilateral relationship. During Jonathan administration, if my knowledge serves me correctly, we had over 80 to 100 bilateral commission. To what extent has this bilateral initiative benefited Nigeria? So Obasanjo's call is okay, but I don't want it to be treated in isolation in terms of just bilateral, but it should be a collective decision to support the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that open up intra-African trade so that we can benefit among ourselves. And this idea of pulling our primary commodities to the global north should stop. We can do business among ourselves, and we can sustain that. We have the population. But then these colonial barriers of Anglophone, like I mentioned elsewhere in this program, must be pulled down so that we can benefit. So Angola and Nigeria, yes, in terms of contribution and oil production, they are the largest in Africa. So I don't know whether it's talking about finished products or it's talking about other agricultural commodities that can be exchanged between Angola and Nigeria. But it's a welcome call, but then we must find a way to improve on this bilateral relationship, and that should dovetail into the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that have a lot of potentials to change the fortune of Africa in terms of global trade.
All right. You know, Africa is the second largest continent after Asia, and there's been advocacy for this intra-African trade over the years. But this has not materialized the way it ought to. What are the barriers, here?
Well, the barriers, as noted, one is the colonial interface that exists within Africa is a major problem. You have Francophone, you have Lusophone, all kinds of phones. And to cooperate within Africa has become very difficult because people are aligning their various interests to their colonial masters, if you like. So what is important now that the leadership must win themselves of these colonial aberrations that are holding us down for years so that we can take advantage of our primary commodity that are domiciled here that the global north comes to exploit and take away and pauperize the people. So I think it's a leadership, a visionary leadership that we need to drive this process. That agreement is already there. To what extent can the leaders say, okay, this is a must-do for us? I need to salute William Ruto of Kenya, who has just done some improvement in that kind of relationship by saying no visa to come into Kenya, in line with that of Rwanda. So if many countries can pull down these barriers, that can improve on trade relations among African countries.
All right, joining the conversation this morning virtually is Dr. Olusoye Ajuwon. He'll be joining us pretty soon so we can get his perspective. He's an economist, so he'll join in a few minutes. Now, before we bring in Dr. Ajuwon, looking at the barriers to trade. Now, one of the barriers that was highlighted in that meeting was the aspect of transportation, deficit in transportation infrastructure within the African continent, moving goods from one place to the other. What can be done about that?
Regrettably, there are various transport networks that were initiated across the various regional blocks. Those transportation network has not been brought to fruition, which is equally the leadership problem. So we have the Nigeria-Cotonou corridor that need to get up to Burkina Faso. I don't know what has happened to that. We have within the East African region that's supposed to come in from Tanzania up to Rwanda. So I don't know what has happened to those road networks. So once we are going to improve on the transportation infrastructure, then trade will be enhanced. But in spite of these challenges, you have the local transport regimes that are moving goods across the African continent. So we just need to improve. We need to improve on that. Maybe a rail transportation network we help to improve on the road network.
Another barrier that I foresee here has to be the exit of the trial of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali from ECOWAS. Do you agree with me? To the inter-African trade that should exist between African countries. Now that these three countries have decided to isolate themselves, and even the big brother in West Africa, they say, oh, we have nothing to do with you. Will that not further weaken the kind of bilateral relations that should exist?
In one breath, I don't think so.
Really?
Yes, because three people have moved away. And within that perspective, they can equally form a small bloc and can improve in terms of what they can do among themselves. That's one argument that
how will that improve? I need you to convince me, because there are three
countries. So if they make a decision that they want to improve on their transportation deliverables, they want to improve trading among themselves, that will enhance the economic prosperity.
Let me cut you.
No, I get the point.
Are you aware that there are certain,
no, you're saying they are landlocked countries.
No, for instance, between Nigeria and Niger, in fact, they are next door neighbor. So if they exit from ECOWAS, don't you think it's going to further weaken the relationship that should exist between Nigeria and Niger? Don't forget, we have some arrangements when it comes to energy supply. That's part of what I'm saying. So don't you think, as these people have decided to isolate themselves, it will further weaken the intra-African trade that should exist among?
No, that was a challenge, one of the challenges that we spoke to earlier, where the issue broke. You suspended transmission of electricity that was a contractual agreement based on the sanction, so that you can find a way to punish the citizens. And that, again, equally affected our business relationship in terms of export of energy to Niger. So in terms of the benefit, why the regional bloc is being weakened, some other political obstacles, I imagine. And one of the greatest things is that society is dynamic.
And you don't see that as a threat to the collective unity that should have existed?
I don't think so. They are just new realignments, and as those new, these are my personal views. Once those new realignment come up strong, then some of, permit my word, the way some of these leaders behave, that might bring some in terms of visionary thinking to empower their people. But because it's always easy to just make argument for the sake of a greater majority. But then one of the mainstream of international politics is alignment, realignment in terms of national interests. What will be beneficial to the average citizens of those countries? Those are what is important.
Now, talking about benefits, one of the reasons for trade is profits. So these African countries wanting to trade with themselves or pushing for intra-African trade, does it seem like there's enough incentive to do intra-African trade as against doing global trade, looking at the exchange, what can come from it? If African countries trade mainly on primary products, it's almost like what you have in one region, you might have in the other region. Now, even if you don't have, if you have a buyer from a Western country offering to pay in dollars, is that not a distraction to this? Or would African countries not prefer to trade with the West because of the difference in earnings than trade with African countries?
When you're talking about African inter-trade relationship, you're not talking that you'll not be involved in global trade, because the World Trade Organization is an umbrella international organization that regulates trades among nations. So we're saying that within Africa, the potential to trade among ourselves is very key to our own development. So if we trade among ourselves, then some of the pressure on the foreign exchange regime that has held us down will be reduced drastically on one hand. On the other hand, those who are offering some incentive from the international trade, then we have a better trade agreement with even other nations. Because there's competition.
That is the question.
Yeah, I'm saying
in
that
the competition.
No, the competition will be
it
more, it will be healthier in my view, because you are trading. So the volume of trade, currently, the statistics, our contribution as a continent to the global trade is just about 3-point-something%.
Okay,
so,
let's look at the ideal versus what is the reality. Ideally, it would be good for Africa to trade with itself. But in reality, do you see that happening more? It's not as if Africa doesn't already trade with itself, but the volume is what we're looking at now. Do you see that happening more, looking at what they could get from the West and what they could get?
If you look at the projections, I can't recall the figures offhand, but if you look at the projection for African intertrade, that outweigh the entire global trade. So if we emphasize on trading among ourselves, then we can retain some of the currencies within Africa. We can improve on the economic prosperities of citizens among countries. You just talk about the deficit in transport infrastructure. So we can use this money to connect and trade among ourselves. And there's a provision in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that people can even do their business and earn their money via their local currencies. So you're empowering small and medium enterprises to trade among themselves. So forget the international politics where they say if you not trade among yourself, the competition, the global competition will affect the way we trade. I don't subscribe to that argument.
Now talking about currencies, for Europe there's a single currency. Can Africa come to that point if even the original blocks are being broken now? Is there a chance of having a single currency in Africa, and how would that aid intra-African trade?
No, those provisions are already in that agreement, and I spoke to some of the challenges that we have currently where you have different currency. The central banks of Africa are working towards having a common currency.
But that's been for a long time.
Even for the one for ECOWAS, because of the French, West African, and the Portuguese, we couldn't achieve that.
So let's look at the feasibility. So does it look possible?
It's possible. You just have visionary leader to translate that into action. So we should not look at the impossibility. Everything is possible. If you have the will that this is what you want to do as a continent, then you can do that. Look at the BRICS economic bloc. They are trying to come up with a common currency that will eventually fight the dollar. These are new initiatives. They've come to fruition in recent time. So the balance of power, international economic relation must constantly change to benefit.
But in the case of the BRICS, the motive is quite different from the reason Africa wants a single currency.
No, I just gave that as an example that even African have a single currency that would benefit African because they are trading among themselves. So this global north psychology that we've been used to, that anything from Africa mustn't work because of the challenge. If we had a commitment, a unit of the purpose, that this is what we want to do as African, then we can achieve that. Because even look at the European Union. UK pulled out of that union. And they are still surviving without the UK. And that challenge, even UK made that decision. There are certain things that they have suffered since they pull out of the European Union. So it's not as easy as that, that once you do this, it will not benefit. You just make that decision. If the 54 African countries are able to remove the visa regime currently that is in place, that will improve the movement of goods and services within Africa. So we must start from somewhere. Some people have taken that initiative, and I'm sure some other leaders will do that.
But let's ask these critical questions, because our job is to ask questions. You know, talking about this visa-free policy, majority quite agree with it. But why do you think African leaders seems to be shying away from, you know, going this route? You have the president of Rwanda who has announced, you know, this will take place in Rwanda. Ghana also has announced that, yes, they'll do that this year. Here you have Nigeria. Nothing is being done in this regard. So what are the concerns? Why do you think African leaders, they seem to be shying away from implementing this issue of visa-free policy?
All right. If you look at it from the perspective of the Bretton Woods institutions, the World Banks, the IMF of this world, international finance corporations of this world, there's a conspiracy, international conspiracy, always trying to put African down. So these people have politics in trying to advise governments that certain policy framework may not be beneficial to the respective countries if they have what you call open border regime within Africa. I think that argument is no longer valid in this 21st century. Africa must think inward and find a way to resolve the challenges of our people, where poverty is almost second nature, corruption is second nature. So we need to improve on this policy initiative, particularly from the Bretton Woods institution, and find a way that we can recalibrate our political process, our economic policies for the benefits of Africans. So we need to put that on the table. This mindset that we have as a people will not help us.
Are there things that should be done first before any country makes a visa-free policy? Could there be blowbacks from such a policy?
No, it's consular and diplomatic relationship things that countries do from time to time, depending on their own evaluation, security reports, what are the economic benefits, what are the bilateral relationships that exist between those countries, even if it's not a universal visa-free regime. When you have a great pull and push factor between two countries, then you need to make the travel and movements of goods and services easier for people when you look at the volume of trade. Take, for example, between Kenya and Nigeria, if you look at the volume of trade in the last 5 years, it was okay. Initially, it was difficult for you to go to Nairobi, but then they made it visa on arrival, which is you have electronic visa arrangement. I've been to some countries, I won't mention specific country, where I did not have to get visa. I just get electronic visa here, and on arrival, I'm stamped into the country. So that relationship exists between country to country. Like the UK has some visa-free regime with some countries. Other countries have some visa. So before you have the universal concept to regulate movements of people across border, and there's even an argument that is sustained globally that is called open border. People are saying that these restrictions are what is creating problem for security, terrorism. Let the borders be open. These are clamor generally across the world that an open border regime will free the world from some of these issues of security. But then that's a different point of view. But the point I'm making is that once you are able to do your consular and diplomatic relationship that will benefit both the receiving and the sending country, then that becomes beneficial to everybody.
All right, thank you very much, Sam Uruji, for being our guest today. There is our in-house analyst, but once he sits in that chair, he becomes a guest. Thank you so much
indeed,
for your
Mercy.
time with us. We've enjoyed the conversation with you.
My pleasure always. Thank you.
We'll do for another break. Stay tuned to Early Exchange.
The National Theatre, Igomu, built during the military regime of Olusegun Obasanjo and finished in the time for the Second World Festival of Black Arts and Culture, Festac, in 1977. The theatre holds amazing treasures and memories. The artworks fill everyone with pride. The National Arts Theatre is visible from the motorway which connects Lagos Island and the mainland. The National Theatre is packed with the artworks of legendary contemporary Nigerian artists, stained glass walls by Yusuf Grillo, sculptures and murals by Lamidi Fakeye, Erabo Emopai, and many others. It was put to full use for a month as one of the 4 venues of the Second World Black and African Festival of Arts and Culture, tagged Festac 77. The complex hosted 16,000 participants from 56 African countries and the diaspora in an unprecedented showcase of African music, fine art, literature, drama, dance, and religion. The National Art Theatre was built and designed by Techno Experts Troll, a Bulgarian company mirroring the Palace of Culture and Sports in Varna, Bulgaria. Completed in 1976, the building is one of the largest and most beautiful of its kind on the African continent. It consists of a central hall with 5,000 seats, a collapsible stage that can be quickly rebuilt, a conference hall with 1,600 seats, 2 large exhibition halls, and 2 cinemas with 800 seats each. The theatre complex has a dressing room for artists, a garage, offices, coffee bars, and a buffet. It has indoor TV and radio systems, as well as booths with facilities for simultaneous translation of languages and hectares of lush green lawn around. The majestic structure sits in Igomu like a quiet mountain, mesmerizing visitors and passers-by. The National Theatre, Souq Enlightenment. Morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruje, and Idahosa Osamans.
Still a deficit budget. We're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby. So the first thing that is done is for the...
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring back Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Well, if you're just joining us, you're at the right place at the right time. We got you covered. We're about looking at the issue of liquidity in the FX market in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria has been making moves in recent times to address the crisis being trailed by the issue of liquidity in the FX market. What has been some of these decisions being taken by the Central Bank? One of them is to ban fintechs and some banks from international transfer. What does this suggest about the situation as regards liquidity in FX market in Nigeria? Let's see what our guest analysts will have to say about this. We are being joined by Dr. Oluseye Ajuwon, a lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Lagos. Glad to have you join us, Dr. Ajuwon. You may have to unmute your mic so that we can hear you properly, Dr. Ajuwon.
I think I muted myself.
Great. I love that smile. Glad you have you join us. It's been a while.
Yes. I've been busy.
That's great. You should be. You're a lecturer here, so you should be busy. Glad to know that. All right, let's start this conversation by looking at the recent step taken by the Central Bank of Nigeria as regards addressing the issue of liquidity in the FX market. The central bank, in its wisdom, decided to ban fintechs and banks from international money transfer. Do you consider this step to be the right step taken at the right time?
Before I answer that question, we need to look back in time and, understand the genesis of what is actually happening in the Nigerian economy today. Three factors are actually, causing this forex problem that we are having in Nigeria today. Number one is that our major source of foreign exchange has been the crude oil. And we know what has been happening to the crude oil market in the country, lately. The bunkering and, stealing of our crude oil to the point that there was a time we could not even generate up to 1 million barrels per day. So that has reduced drastically, the forex inflow into the country. Then the second problem is the issue of our demand. In this part of the world, we tend to demand more for imported things than what we are manufacturing. So we are import dependent to the point where I can categorically say that more than 90% of what we are consuming in the country are imported. And, that is putting a serious pressure on the forex. So you can see on one side, the inflow has reduced because we are no more, producing the crude oil as much as we are producing before, and the little we are producing are being stolen. So it has reduced the inflow. Then the outflow has increased. What we are demanding for in the near and the recent past, you can see that most of the things that were not in the market before has been introduced to the market now that increase the outflow, the demand for imported things. A good example is the Japa syndrome. Everybody wants to go and, get out of this country, some through education that they have to pay school fees, some just, and, in moving, that's putting serious pressure on the forex in Nigeria. Then the third issue is the last central bank we have in Nigeria in terms of Godwin Emefiele. The man did a lot of wickedness for this country when he was, and it is still his wickedness that is still creating the problem up to today. So if we understand this genesis of the problem, then we understand where we are coming from, where we are, and where we are going to from where we are. So when you see what the call dispensation, the governor of central bank is trying to do, is actually to clean up all the mess that has been on ground before now. And I think they are actually doing the best they can for this time period. But whether what they are doing is enough or not is another discussion.
All right, Dr. Ajuwon, good to see you in the new year. Not so new anymore, but Happy New Year to you. It's the first time we'll have a new year in early exchange for 2024.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your take on CBN in its efforts to control forex liquidity and also to control the depreciation of the naira against the dollar, stopping outbound transfers of money from Nigeria and allowing the IMTOs for only inbound transfers? Do you see that as a policy that's going to have effect on maybe some businesses and ability to make some transactions?
If you look at what is on ground recently, you will see that when the current CBN governor met like 7.7, let me say around 7 billion debt that we need to, clean up. And definitely on daily basis, we are still demanding for foreign exchange. So it's increasing, and you have to first clear what is on ground before you can move forward. And you can see what they have done in the last 2-3 months that he came in. They've cleared more than 2 billion debt. Then, you know, they asked for auditing of all these forex and discovered that 2.4 billion of the debt does not have a legitimate claim. So you see, by the time you remove the 2.2, they pay the 2.4 that, you know, cannot, you will see what they have left is around, I think around 2-point-something billion is what they have left to clear. And we can see what they have done. You know, they've gone to Afri-Mex Bank to collect 3-point-something billion as they are approaching World Bank to collect another like $1.5 billion. So that at the end of the day, they'll be able to clear, you know, the grant, and, you know, we'll have a leverage grant with which to move. And, you know, ways of going about it is to ensure that let the forex market be a pure demand and supply analysis. So banks can go ahead and trade for foreign exchange at any price they believe is what it can't make business for them. So I think, you know, by the theory of economics, this is the right direction to follow.
All right, Dr. Ajuwon, what do you make of this development where the central bank decided to increase the application fee for IMTO licenses from 500,000 naira to 10 billion naira? What do you make of this development? Do you think this is sustainable or is coming at the right time?
You see, it's a way of forcing, well, people might not like it that way, but it's a way of forcing currency into this country, because definitely by the time you expand that, then people that want to do business here, we have to bring in money. And, you know, in bringing in money, you know, from where it was to where it is now, definitely it's going to, you know, anybody that knows it can make it will be the people, you know, that will come in. And, you know, it will bring a lot of money. And at the same time, it will reduce the pressure of so many people applying, you know, to want to, trade in this market. So this is, a policy in the right direction.
So who are those, in your view, who will regularly make use of the IMTOs? Who are those who would need the services of the IMTOs? I'm not talking about those in diaspora that need to send some money to their relatives in Nigeria, but from Nigeria, who are those that you think normally need the services of these IMTOs? Let's start from there.
You know, that's what I'm saying. Why do you need it in the first instance? I said it, you know, when you look at, because what is happening is purely forces of demand and supply. Once demand is more than supply, price is bound to go up. You see, most of the people that need Forex, they need to start looking inward, because most of the things that we are demanding Forex for, it's something that we can source locally. So if you know you can source it locally, why must you be sourcing them from outside the market? So this will force so many people to start rethinking and looking for, you know, inward way of sourcing, you know, for what they need, that they don't have to start, you know, looking outside. It is, you know, although it has its negative effects in that some companies definitely, you know, need this thing, that there is no, but I don't believe that there is no alternative. I believe in all things and in everything, there is always alternative. So people will have to think deeply to make sure that, you know, they think outside the box to get alternative. We can't continue to be under pressure of forex and think that all is well. It is not government that is generating dollars. We don't have ability, to manufacture any foreign country currency. So definitely, we have to reduce the pressure on the dollar. We have to reduce the pressure.
All right.
Like I said, on the naira rather.
Okay, great. Dr. Ajun, as you're aware that the major source of forex for Nigeria is sales of crude oil, which in recent times, has declined when it comes to production. Even when it comes to meeting our OPEC quota, we've not been able to do that. Nigeria is struggling with that. Now, what should be the narrative now that you have Port Harcourt refinery coming on board? You have that of Dangote. Would that be a plus or minus? And what should be done to ensure that sales of crude oil improve so that the effects that you have in the system or the liquidity will improve in a matter of months?
Actually, when it comes to the crude oil, because that's what is actually creating the major pressure that we are having on the naira, the demand, what's it called? And I want to add a caveat there, because you see, there is a problem that is brewing that the policymakers are not paying attention to. When you look at our filling stations today, you will see that we have started having scarcity of fuel at the filling station. And we need to go and check, is there any reduction in the demand for the refined oil coming into the country? If not, then the caveat I want to add is this, that the policymakers are not looking at. The way the naira has so much dropped now, it has made our fuel so cheap for all the neighboring countries now to be demanding for it. So our tankers, we just be finding ways of taking our fuel that the government is subsidizing, which is a problem at the onset that they came to solve. Now taking it outside the country now and make more money, and those countries will be enjoying it. So it's like a leech, sucking Nigeria dry. So if the policymakers don't look at that and ensure that our refined petrol and all those things are not leaving the shore of this country, Nigeria will just be suffering, while the neighboring countries will now be enjoying what, sucking us dry. That's the right word there.
All right, talking about something sucking the resources of Nigeria dry.
They are cooperating in that area, in that, they are looking at ways of, cutting off all the sabotage, all those that has been siphoning our oil, illegally. They have declared a thorough war on them, and I think the war has started yielding positive results. And also, all our investors in the crude oil market, the foreigners specifically, they are no more happy, impressed, in bringing any investment into Nigeria in that regard. And that's also what the world is looking towards, because the world has started, looking beyond crude oil into other forms of energy sources. So it will be wrong to say anybody will be coming into the country now, to come and invest in crude oil when the world is already looking beyond it. So that is also creating a serious problem on that side for us, because believe me sincerely, for now, Nigeria cannot be thinking beyond crude oil. That is for now. We can't be thinking beyond crude oil. But as it is now, the way the world is moving, it's cutting us on our way, to take us to the next level when we are not yet ready for it.
All right, in a bid to move towards the next level, which would be to find some relief for the naira against the dollar. Now, the CBN has revealed that it uncovered on invalid foreign overdue claims totaling $2.4 billion, which they say have pressured the naira for long and spooked the currency market. What's your take on this discovery?
In my introduction, I've already, spoken about it. I said that those are part of the evils that the last CBN governor had dug, some graves the last CBN have dug for this country. And, thank God they are able to identify that $2.4 billion. And we will see what will happen, in the course of time. I thank God when the CBN governor was speaking yesterday, he said that, those 2.4 billion naira, they have contacted the people to let them know that this money will not be paid. And so far, there has not been any, negative, what's it called, from there. But that does not mean that there might not be any issues from there. They might just, be looking at how to, what's it called, put their legal documents together. So I would say for now, so far, so good. But we know this is Nigeria. We know the way things roll. And I hope at the end of the day, we will not have any issues with those 2.4 billion. But those are the evils, those are the graves, those are the wickedness that the former CBN governor and those in the position of authority in CBN led for Nigeria to grapple with.
All right, talking about the CBN, the central bank governor last week issued a directive to NNPC, on behalf of the federal government for NNPC to transfer its revenue to the Central Bank of Nigeria when it comes to forex inflow and the revenue being generated. Do you think this will make any impact on the issue of liquidity in the market?
Yes, definitely that will help the liquidity in the market. But going beyond CBN, now taking over the forex of the NNPC, I think we are just decorating evil in this country, because I see no reason why we could not audit the NNPC accounts the way they have done for CBN. Until we do that, I think we are just decorating evil in this country. It goes beyond just saying that let the forex be passing through CBN. I think we need to do forensic auditing of NNPC accounts.
Sure. Now, the stopping of outbound transfer for international money transfers. Now, do you think it's going to have any effect on maybe small and medium enterprises, people who would do imports at some levels and will need to make some transfer? Is this going to be a challenge for them?
Like I said, the period we are now is a very, very rough period. And, it's something that I pray to be able to wither it successfully. And definitely, the situation of things now will definitely affect not only the small scale businesses, but the whole economy. Because when you look at, but definitely I can say that it will increase the flow of exchange. Once you are able to pay the price, yes, go ahead, because it is better you suck your forex through the bank than through the black market. Because after sucking it through the black market, you still need, to transfer using the financial institutions. But if you are collecting your money through the black market, then it's a little bit difficult or not straightforward. In fact, it's difficult, not just straightforward of, transferring the finance through the financial market. So with this now, it makes it open now. Everybody can make their transfer through the financial market. The problem is that the price is very, very high now.
What is playing out in the parallel market, where that Nigerians, that's where they depend on when it comes to accessing this forex. We had a situation last week where the BDS operators in Abuja had to shut down due to scarcity of forex. Now, how serious is these, and what will be the impact of these on the common man who needs to access this forex? And what do you think the central bank can do to help, elevate this crisis?
And when you look at what happened in Abuja, the BDX closing shop, it's a funny what's it called. And when you look at it, and the idea they gave that the forest was scarce and all those things, you see, the BDA, the BDC or whatever they are called, it's supposed to be. They are not supposed to be the major source of forest in the country. So, but when you look at the number of BDAs in the country, you will see that they have now turned to be the major source of forest in the country. So nobody is going to ask them to close shop. By the time the bank is doing the work that they are supposed to do, which is the appropriate thing, majority of them will close shop. So that one is not an issue that we need to be discussing. The issue is, please liberalize the money. Let everybody be able to buy their dollar and sell their dollar at any price everybody wants to buy it. If you cannot afford it, nobody is forcing you. If you can afford it, go ahead and buy it. If you cannot afford it, then you leave the market. It's as simple as ABC. So that's the way it is. The issue of forex is it's supposed to be scarce. They are not supposed to be major source of what's it called. If not for the aberration that the last CBN management did and licensing so many BDX, it's an aberration. So that is not even an issue. Let anybody that need forex approach anywhere they can access the forest and get it at the ruling price in the market.
Dr. Ajoy, it might not be as easy as you imply, because you're painting the ideal versus the reality. The reality is what plays out in the parallel market. How is it easy for the proposition that you're putting on the table now? Because these people, they form part of everyday transactions. And the reason why they're being patronized is because of the easy access to forest in the parallel market. Don't you think it's high time the CBN governor or the CBN as a body should come out with a framework of assisting them with the availability of forex?
Instead of doing that, I would say that the CBN should make financial institutions, especially our commercial banks, to be able to trade, with these forex easily. Because, BDX is still BDX. They are not financial, they are not formal financial institutions. So if, for instance, I source my money from BDX now, and I need to make transaction abroad, can the BDX pay for me? I will still have to come back to the bank. So which means I will still pay the bank to do it and all those. That's a double cost. So why not bank? It is a function of the bank to do all these things, not the BDX. So please, I think we are not supposed to be discussing the BDX. What we are supposed to be discussing is, why are banks not able to do this function properly? If there are so many measures the CBN had put in place that is not making the commercial banks to perform their function, the central bank needs to start looking at those areas, clean those places up, because that's the way to go, not to be talking about BDX is the right. How many BDX are around? Which one is closer to us? Is it the commercial banks or the BDX? Can the BDX help you to buy things abroad? Or carry the transaction beyond buying and selling of the currency with them? They can't do more than that.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Olusoye Ajuwon. We're not done with this conversation. We'll go on a quick break and then we'll return. Please stay tuned.
Yes.
Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Marse Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Her historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafawa Balewa Square, Souq Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
Still a deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby. So the first thing that is done is for the...
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring back Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, it's the Early Exchange. I'm glad to know you're still there with us. We're still looking at the issue of liquidity when it comes to the FX market in Nigeria. And our special guest analyst is still here with us, shaping policy and advancing development with his own conversation. We still have Dr. Ajuwo here with us. Glad to know you're still there with us, Dr. Ajuwo.
Yes, I'm still very much here.
I'm glad to know. Now, let's look at what I often call the dollarization of the Nigeria economy. It's a trend which several governmental administrations have been battling with over the years. It's rather becoming a reality we have to live with, isn't it?
Yes. In fact, when I was thinking about the situation of things overnight, I was like, I think it's high time we start thinking of redenomination of Naira, because we have gotten to a situation where, you know, if you are not thinking about redenomination of Naira now, we might be creating a serious problem for us way forward. Because now dollar is like 1,500 Naira, which is, you know, far more than what anybody could have imagined, you know, by this time last year. But that's the way it is now. So I think the CBN needs to start thinking of redenomination of Naira, maybe by 1 digit or 2 digits, you know, which means if it is by 1 digit, instead of Naira being 1,500, it will be 150. And if it is by 2 digits, instead of it being 1,500, it will now be 150 Naira. So I think at this level, the CBN should start looking at the idea of redenominating Naira as a way out of the problem, you know, we have currently now.
Is it about what figure the money bears or the value of purchase? Now, if the CBN redenominates the Naira, and as you've given an example, for instance, the Naira trading at about 1,500 Naira to the dollar becomes 150 Naira. What is the purchasing power of 150 Naira? Shouldn't that be what the value of the Naira is about, as compared to what figure you see written in it?
You see, when we are talking about redenomination of Naira, it's you know, there are some problems it's going to solve. And number one is that if we don't do that, the rate at which people are asking for salary increments, you know, government will just be spending so much money printing naira. Because imagine, now what we were buying for 400 naira before is now like 1,500 naira. So, which is like more than times 3, almost like times 4. So if care is not taken, the demand for naira will be far, far higher. And, which means government will have to spend more money printing currency. But with the redenomination, it is going to sort of, reduce the quantity of money that the government will have, that the central bank will have to be printing. That's the number one. Then the number two, I told you that, there is a problem with what is happening now that the policymakers might not be thinking about, and that is things in this country now is now so, the naira is now so devalued that around all the countries around us will just be sucking on us. And what we are supposed to enjoy, it is now all the countries around us that will now be benefiting. They will just be sucking us dry, while we Nigerians will just, be at the receiving end. But by the time, naira is denominated, it brings everybody to par, because definitely salary is going to increase the way forward. We cannot continue the way we are going. And not only that, those that have been hiding the dollars, they are hiding it because they believe that, now they are happy. Naira is now 1,500 naira, so they are expecting it to even climb. By the time they redenominate naira and they realize that, okay, instead of it 1,500 is now 150 naira now, they will realize that does it worth it? So that might enable, the people that have been stocking dollars to actually, bring it out and stop that idea.
All right, Dr. Ajuwan, are you aware that the CBN has outrightly said that the body is not going to redenominate the naira as far as the year 2024 is concerned? Why do you think, even though some experts have argued that it won't make any impact, it will just affect the nominal value of the naira, but why do you think the CBN has taken the strong position of not redenominating the naira? And what should be the narrative if that's not the option for the CBN? What should be done instead to manage this crisis?
Like I said, if anybody knows me well, as far back as was it not 2011 or when was Professor Soludo was the governor of Central Bank and wanted to redenominate naira, I was part of the people that came out and said then that it doesn't worth it, for us to consider naira redenomination. And I am the one saying now, when you look at the situation of things, that I think the CBN needs to start looking at that idea of redenominating naira. You see, when the level of inflation is something that is not that high, the way it was then, the naira denomination doesn't worth it, because there are some problems that is associated with naira denomination, and it might spike inflation that you think is the problem. It might spike it. But when you look at the present dispensation, then it is in a level that I think it would be ideal to start thinking of naira redenomination. Because imagine when naira is going, when $1 is going for 1,500 naira, and I can assure you that we've not gotten to the limit. So to take appropriate policies or measures, that we address that issues, I think we should allow everything to be on the table, and which means the central bank should be looking at the issue of naira denomination. I am saying it as an expert, and before the CBN can go into say they want to do that, they need to look at what will be the effect of it on the economy. But I think at this level where the central bank should start looking at that idea of redenomination of the naira.
Okay, now let's look back at some of the issues discussed here. Now, we talked about the banks, which should be the ideal channel for Forex, but we have the BDCs that assumed the role of being like playing a complementary role, and over time they now became the major channel for Forex. The central bank on its own took some measure to discourage that by stopping allocation of Forex to the BDCs and even the floating of the Naira, and now the stopping of outbound transfers for international money operators. Some of these policies, looking at the effect, does it look like they are solving the issue? And if they're not solving the issue, what do you think can solve this issue? People have talked about production, but that's not something that is going to yield an immediate results. What do you think?
Like I said earlier, I said it is the banks that are supposed to be doing this function of Forex. Let me just put it that way. And if there are issues, because I know that there are some policies that have been put in place in the past that is tying the hands of the commercial banks from performing this function effectively. So I think the CBN needs to start looking at those issues. If you say you are liberalizing the market, I see no reason why you should be limiting the commercial bank from doing the functions that they are supposed to do. So all the policies that they have put in place in the past, that they are still putting in place now, that is negating that, I think the central bank needs to be removing those policies so that the commercial banks, can actually perform the function of Forex. They are the one that has the appropriate right to be doing the duty of Forex for people that need it in the country, genuinely need it in the country.
Now, let's look at the issue of repatriated funds. Airlines battling with the issue of repatriated funds, even though the CBN has been tackling that in recent times. But don't you think this will also add pressure to the liquidity issue and then the issue of dollar and all that? Handling this kind of responsibility, the payment of the backlog and all that, and then meeting up the demands for these currencies locally. Don't you think CBN is handling more than what it can chew?
Like you said, I told you, that one of these issues is the jackbarring syndrome, and this idea of us, always wanting to travel abroad and this sort. You see, the money that we are owing the foreign airlines have to be paid. And the way to go about it is what the CBN is doing. All the outstanding billion of dollars that the CBN have committed themselves to pay, they have to pay it. When I was reading when I was listening to the CBN governor, he said that imagine there are some people they did not even ask for Forex. Yes, they were given. There were some people what they asked for, what they gave them was more than what they asked for. Those are serious, indictment on the part of the last management of the CBN. But that's, aside. The issue is all the what's they call legitimate money that, can be verified has to be paid. And a good example is the airline that you spoke about. Nigerians have flew, they have bought their tickets in Naira, and, the government have to provide the money. Because if the government refuse to provide the money, we know it's something that we have to pay. And I remember well, was it not 2022, the airline, were threatening to boycott Nigeria market. So it is either we say, okay, to hell with you, we can't pay the money now, you suspend it, and let everybody that wants to travel outside the country start moving to either Ghana, Cameroon, or whatever to go and make their flight. That's, one way of going about it. Otherwise, but because those in government themselves need to fly, and they know that it will be better for them to fly from Abuja or to fly from Lagos, they will not want that. Otherwise, if they know they don't want that, then they have to pay the money. But if you can bear the consequence of the international airline, stopping flying Nigeria, and the consequences of also the money that we will be generating at the airports, if you can, afford not to get those revenue, then we can go ahead and and say we are not paying the money now. We don't have the what's it called for now, but it is something that we have to pay. It's just that they might not pay it now. But if we can't do that, well, the government have to pay. And in paying that money, it is what the government have to see as something that they have to do. That's the way I would put it.
Looking at diaspora remittances, money comes into Nigeria from the diaspora, but sometimes it doesn't go through the bank. And at a time, there was the Naira for dollar policy. It's a time to bring back such policies and even increase the incentive.
You see, it's still part of what I'm saying. If you allow the commercial banks to be doing their function the way they're supposed to be doing it, I see no reason why people will preserve, because any other method outside the financial institution is risky. And if you look at the financial space in Nigeria now, fintech are taking up a lot of the financial space in Nigeria. I remember when I did my PhD, it was on looking at the collateral and issue of the cost of finance. And I realized that most most of credits that has collateral always tends, to underperform. So you see, but when you look at what I said then and what is happening now, the fintech are now taking over that space, giving out money to people without asking for any collateral, and at a high interest rate, far higher than what the commercial banks are asking for. And they are taking up that space. It is now the commercial banks are now waking up to realize that if we don't move fast, the financial tech is already taking over their business. So you will see financial banks are now asking people to come and borrow money, that there is a credit facility and all those things, even if it is not your salary account, because the fintech are doing it and they are making a huge money doing that. So I see no reason why the central bank can look at all the policies that they have used to tie the hands and legs of commercial banks in performing their function and reduce those policies so that commercial banks can actually take the space that they have.
All right, let's wrap up the conversation with this. Let's look at the CBN means and ways which the last CBN governor was accused of abuse and misappropriation. Now, what should be the lessons for the present CBN governor now that we're dealing with the issue of liquidity, which according to reports also accounted for the abuse of the CBN means and ways, accounted for the depletion of the foreign reserve? What should be the lessons, or what should be the narrative now for the new CBN governor now that we're battling with the issue of liquidity?
You see, when you look at the law of the ways and means, it says that the central bank, who is the last resort, the government bank, can borrow the government up to the tune of 5% of the, is it 5% of the GDP or 5% of the government revenue? I can't remember the exact, but 5%. And that if the government have not retired that loan, the central bank should not borrow government any other money until that is retired. But the last management of central bank put that aside, and they keep borrowing money to, in fact, up to the tune that now they had borrowed more than 30% of the GDP to the government. And when you look at when Buhari was taking over government, the the money in circulation. I'm not talking about currency now. I'm talking about the money. It was around 28 trillion. And today, we are now talking about 70-something, like almost 78 trillion. So the money has moved from 28 to 78. So you can see that we are now over liquidified, if there's any word like that. So, but the way forward from there is this. The current management of the CBN should ensure that that's stopped. We should not increase the money supply from the way it is now. That should be the first way forward. Because, you know, what has been supplied cannot be unsupplied. So the best thing is, okay, this damage has been done. How can we rectify it? And the way forward is, the first thing is they should stop it. They should not allow that evil to continue. So they should peg it where it is now and not create any other money supply further than what is already on ground now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olusoye Ajuwon, who is an economist and also a lecturer at the Department of Economics, UNILAG, for being our guest on Early Exchange today. We value your time with us on the show.
Thank you.
And so this is where we wrap it up today on Early Exchange. It's been a great time. We thank you for being with us all the way from 8 a.m. till this time. Tomorrow is another time when you can join the show. Remember, it's 8 a.m. West African time. I am Blessing Aiche. I ask that you have yourself a great day, and please remember to stay with Souq News. You will get information. You will enjoy wonderful programs. Market Insight comes up at 11 a.m. Sports is one of the programs that you enjoy here in Souq News at